Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Neo Alpha walkthrough. This is part 1. I'm going to be taking you through the early parts of the demo and the controls. Some pretty important and useful information here is there's a lot of stuff that you can mess with, which I think is a beautiful touch that they've added to this game that is in development by Team Ninja, the people who brought you games such as Ninja Gaiden 3, everybody remembers that classic. They also did the older ones, so I cut them some slack, as people keep telling me to. But the cool stuff here that you want to be aware of is you can turn off reset camera, which is great news, because I don't like it when I'm trying to lock on and I spin around and end up getting killed. It also enables you to prioritize frame rate over visuals, or visuals over frame rate, depending on what type of person you are, which I think is a cool touch as well for a console game. I'm going to be playing this on the movie mode, which will give it a higher resolution and a better aesthetical look, but it'll give it slightly more frame rate problems, as opposed to a much more solid frame rate and compromised visuals. And you might be saying, well, why would you do this, Chris? You seem to be a massive proponent towards, performance. Well, I didn't notice the frame rate shitting the bed all that often in this game as I do in a lot of other games, and of course it was happening, but the frame rate was always kind of higher than like 40, so I didn't mind it at all. I noticed the fluctuations, but it didn't affect the way I felt the controls played. So in a lot of ways, I thought it was okay, I've been playing Dark Souls 3. It doesn't get much fucking worse on Xbox One, so I really didn't mind it at all. The second thing you're going to notice here, guys, is I've upped the brightness to max. And personally, I think the game doesn't look as nice because I think the shadows and the depth of contrast is really nice on the default settings, but you wouldn't be able to see this video. You would see nothing. I actually recorded this run twice because of these issues, and for some reason this game is incredibly dark. And when you capture dark games, they look even darker. And then once you've process them and compress them and everything, and you get them up onto YouTube, it probably looks even fucking worse. So I decided to compromise on the brightness a little bit just to make it so that you can always see what's happening. And when you're playing it, you'll have how the game's meant to look. This is just a little bit more washed out. So the very first pickup there is a sword, but I wanted to do this without it, just to show you and give you some confidence that you can do this, because the beginning of this demo is incredibly difficult to people who are used to Souls games, I think. If you're not used to playing a Souls game, you'll probably have much more success on this section, because you don't have any of the habits or the expectations that people who've played those games will have. I got destroyed at the beginning of this demo because it didn't make sense to me. I was trying to play it like Dark Souls, and it isn't, guys. This is janky Souls. A lot of people are asking, is it close to Onimusha? No, it's nothing like Onimusha. The only thing that they have in common is the look and the whole feudal period. Is it like Ninja Gaiden? No, nothing like Ninja Gaiden. The only thing they have in common is you use a katana and the enemies have IS Ninja pathfinding. Is it like Dark Souls? A little bit, but it really isn't as well. It's exactly what I knew it was going to be. It is a game that is trying to be a Souls game, but it's done by a developer that doesn't have the nuance or the full expertise to fully understand how to make one, and instead you get this really strange amalgamation of ideas that ends up being really goofy. And it can go both ways, and it does in a lot of ways. It can be goofy in a great way where something special happens, and it can be goofy in a way where it kind of controls and moves like shit. And there's a whole bunch of that in this. It's kind of strange, but the more you play it, the more you'll learn to understand it, and then you'll be able to understand whether or not it's for you. And I really didn't like this when I first played it. I thought it felt like shit. I thought the controls were janky. I hated the lock-on where he doesn't face the character in a game where your back is your weakness. Like, everything about it was really annoying me. The stamina penalties, stopping you from moving, a whole host of things that just aren't very good. And it felt clunky, it didn't feel fun, and it felt overly punishing because you die in about 2 hits, which never really changes throughout this demo when you level up. It's kind of brutal that way, but we'll talk more of that. But then I stopped trying to play it like Dark Souls, and I started trying to play it like Neo, and it got a lot better, and I got a bit more used to it, and I understand what was expected of me. So at the beginning here, there's no reason to use your fists, guys. I'm doing it so that it gives people confidence who are struggling with the demo. There's a sword back on that first body, and that sword will block 100% of almost any attack that gets thrown at it, if you have the key to do it, the stamina bar below your HP. There are a couple of features you're not going to see me use too much in this. One of them is the regenerate the key by pressing the stance change. Oh, you see that, by the way? Do not block with the arms. Do you notice how I've been dodging? Well, I was curious whether or not you could actually block consistency with your arms, because this is not a Souls game. In this game, maybe you can block 100% with everything, but you can't. And it's really important to test these things because of the expectations that this is going to work like a Souls game, and it doesn't. So for me, I spent my entire first playthrough of this alpha not blocking. I dodged everything because I didn't think blocking with a sword would be effective because I was thinking the wrong way. And then it turns out blocking is the most powerful thing in this game. You can block almost everything. As long as you've got the key, you can block it. It's kind of insane. And getting back to the stamina regen mechanic, when you do attacks, if you look at my bar, you'll not notice it until I get the sword, because it doesn't seem to work with the punches. But as it's regenerating, your bar will turn blue. It'll also turn red to show you penalties and things. When it turns blue, if you press R1, it will make this noise, and you will instantly recuperate the amount of blue that's in your stamina bar. And it's this weird mechanic of regenning, almost like an active reload on your swings, that gives you a quicker way of getting stamina back. But I really didn't think it was that useful, and the more I focused on it, the more I was distracted, and I didn't play very well, so I'm not going to use it too much. Although I do think once you fully understand how it works and you get into the habit of doing it, it's probably like revving the sword in Devil May Cry, where it becomes really useful. But it's just not something you're going to see me do too much of. Additionally, this game uses a combo system where you can... It seems like you can map certain enders to your moves, but it doesn't seem to work as I thought it would. Whereas I was trying to put different enders on different attacks, and it just wasn't having any of it. So there's an ability called the Kai Pulse, where it's a crowd control AoE move that also gets rid of this negative energy on the ground that affects your stamina, which is one of the worst parts of this demo. I'm not going to use that at all, because I used it the entire playthrough, my first time through, and I wanted to see different things, but I couldn't quite make it so that you swapped your moves. And there's probably a way to do it, but it just wasn't as easy or as straightforward as I would have liked. And I messed with it a little bit in this recording, so you'll see me trying to change it to a different move, and it just doesn't assign. So there's obviously more to that I've not quite figured out. But there's a lot of ambushes in this game, and if you thought fighting multiple enemies was difficult in Dark Souls, I would say that it's much more difficult in this, because the game is... It doesn't play as well as Dark Souls, it just doesn't. There is a looseness to it. There is a swimming nature to the lock-on and a lot of the features. Not all the combos move fluidly together, and a lot of the times it can be quite confusing as to why you miss. Like, there's a soft lock-on element where you can miss a lot, and it has the Dark Souls 3 stun lock of, if you get hit once, you will always take a second hit before you can get away. That's the stamina penalty on both of us, as I try and finish this guy off, which I just successfully did. But one of the features that, as I mentioned, I won't be using will be the Kai Pulse. You can use it to get rid of this negative energy that enemies drop and bosses drop, and it's this whole mechanic which I think is absolute shit, but I'm hoping the main game makes it valid and interesting and useful, and it makes more sense to me. On top of that, I'm not going to be blocking as much as I would normally, because I wanted to see if I could dodge things and focus on the dodge. And my advice to you, if you're struggling in this game, is to block. Blocking is incredibly powerful when you have a sword. I'm going to be opening up the first shortcut without using a weapon, just so that the people who are struggling with the weapon can follow this and be like, wow, if you can do it without a weapon, you can definitely do it with one, because the attack difference is about 80 or something daft. This section here is full of wandering, patrolling enemies. One of the enemies here is an armoured knight who is considerably stronger than everybody else, and the difference between him and these normal dudes is he attacks multiple times and gets armour on each of his hits. So you want to either parry him, or you want to just get away from all the strikes before you counter. This system of combat features just like Witcher did, where attacking people from behind nets you a critical, but being hit from behind nets you double damage as well. So you take a massive hit if you get hit from behind. This game dances with a very strange cognitive dissonance as well. It is a game that rewards R1 mashing, and it's a game that heavily punishes R1 mashing, and that probably sounds like a contradiction in terms, but it's not. I watched Darkside Phil mash his way through a lot of this demo, Well, the beginning part anyway. He died, sure, but he had a lot more success than I thought he would, just because mashing R1 does work. But at the same time, the stamina penalties in these games are insane. I have no idea why they've decided to do it the way they have, as I level up here. All I'm going to level, guys, is heart. I'm going to go pure heart on this build, because every katana, which is my favourite weapon in this build, I think it's just the best. It's the fastest, it's the easiest to use, it's good for every situation. That's the weapon I didn't pick up. We're going to put it on and we're going to farm some gear now. But every katana has a B scaling with heart, B+, some might be different, so I'm going to focus on getting as much damage out of my katana as I can. There's a lot of stats to level, and each of them gives you different attributes and different benefits. Heart seems to give you some ki, a little bit of life, and some attack, so I went with that, and it's kind of the one I've stuck with. I don't know which is best, folks. I'm not going to be able to tell you how to make the best build or kill, make the most overpowered things, but heart works for me, so that's what I'm going to go with. You're also going to see me utilise the high stance a lot because it's my favourite stance. It is a slower, heavier on the ki, and powerful stance, which is really, really good. And then I'll be using the medium stance to get frame advantage and to parry people. But what I'm doing here is I'm summoning Revenants of dead people. So whenever you die in this game, this is how I think it works anyway, you leave a bloodstain that becomes a Revenant that other people can summon and fight. And what it does, I believe, is it gives the Revenant your gear and maybe your mannerisms. So if you use a certain style more than another one, a certain stance, it will have that stance, and so on. And when you kill them, they can drop good gear. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to farm these early Revenants, try and get some high level ones, and try and get some good gear drops to make the rest of this level a bit easier. So whenever you see people using the axe, depending on what stance they're on will depend on how they can attack. And if you know it's one of the slower stances, you can parry it quite easily. I didn't successfully parry then. That was a parry. Parrying in this game is very dangerous because it leaves you open to take big damage. But it's also really rewarding once you do it. He's in the heavy stance now, which is one of the easy ones to parry. And then, of course, I don't do it. There's my stamina penalty. That's a very lucky miss because the tracking wasn't so great for him. And I'm going to finish him by poking into the grab. So my favourite aspect of this demo, and this game, from what I've played, is that whenever you're fighting a humanoid enemy, it will show you his ki gauge. So you can see his stamina, you can see how much stamina he has, you can see if he can do multiple attacks, and you can see when he's weak, when he's out of stamina. And in this game, when your stamina bar goes red, you go into a penalty, and if you get hit, it knocks you over. It also enables you to be grabbed by pressing triangle. So when you do that, it'll go into this animation where Geralt of Rivia stabs him in the chest and then does a little drag. But you're not invincible when it happens, so you need to be careful. That is a high stance on a lance, so that can be parried quite easily once you've seen it a few times. Be careful though, folks, especially if you're new to this demo. Summoning these Revenants, a lot of these people might be a higher level than you. I'm aiming for spirits that are higher level because it means I'll hopefully get better gear. Or that's how I think it works. But the problem is they have better stats. So they're stronger than you, they have more life than you, they do more damage than you. So it's expertise over ability kind of thing. And it's not something you're going to learn immediately, and it's easy to die here. But the cool news is the shrine is so close, we can come back into battle and kill more of them. But that one, look, that one's level 8, and I don't know what level we are, but I don't think we're level 8. So these guys are stronger than us, but you can beat them if you understand the game, and if you become a better player, which is what this will do, and I recommend you do a lot of this. But this guy is using middle stance, which does that quick thrust. The computer always does multiple thrusts, so you want to go back in and try and knock them down. There's the knockdown, there's the stab on the ground, and then I'm going to try and hit him from behind as he gets up. There was a block, immediate counter, the mid stance is very fast. I never use the low stance because the damage on it seems to be too shit to warrant using, but it has the ability to get your stamina back by dodging, which is really useful, but the damage is so low it's a waste of time. That's the heavy attack. He does that multiple like scimitar attack, and here is him stunned, and then there's an execution, and he drops a torso. So this game works just like Souls games with weight. The more armor you wear, the heavier you are, and you'll go from doing a really fast dash attack for your evade to doing a much slower roll, but both of them are useful, and I wouldn't say stay away from heavy armor because it's going to keep you alive longer. But that is the high stance, which means this guy can be parried. He'll either do that one, which is the heavy attack, or he will do the quicker one, which can also be parried. everything can be feasibly be parried, it's just do you know how to do it. High stances are much easier because they're slower, and that's all I'm doing here, guys. I'm exploiting the fact that I know that attack, and I know the parry timing, and I know that it's going to do good damage when we put him down. That's me trying to weaken him due to his loss of stamina. That's the execution. And you'll notice we're getting that purple object. I can't read it on the screen at the moment because it's a little pixelated. It's called like Okinono or something daft like that. It's a tool to summon friends to help you co-op. It's essentially a white summon sign. I've never used it because I'm not interested in that, but it's something to do if you want to, and it's definitely probably going to be quite fun because this is a tricky game, and it's much longer than you're going to think too. There are 2 areas and 2 bosses, and the enemies that you think are bosses aren't bosses. You'll know the boss when you meet them. So this guy's using the axe, and he's using it in, I think that might be the low stance, which is fast, but it's still slow because it's the axe. The axe does massive damage. And early on, my favourite weapon was the axe because my katana wasn't doing great damage. I didn't understand the mechanics too well, so I just used the axe. I outspaced people, and I hit them with big damage. And if you are comfortable with the axe, pick the axe up, focus on it, and go for strength. Boost your strength stat, and hopefully if it scales with that, you can do massive damage. And I reckon the axe is going to cut people down in this game. But I was always going to use the katanas because that's why I like these kind of games. I'm a massive lover of the whole feudal Japan era video games. The biggest problem with them is normally they don't have very good mechanics, and this game has some interesting mechanics that are fun, but it has some really questionable ones too. Like, the lock-on is just like Dark Souls 2 in a lot of ways, where your attacks will whiff, and I really don't like that when you're locked on. I wish they would change it to straight up Dark Souls 1 lock-on, where you face the opponent all the time. Oh, that right there was me regaining stamina. I don't know if you saw it. It made that noise. Another thing worth noting too is, can you remember before we fought that first Revenant, I went into the menus and I bought a skill. I bought the ability to parry, and that's what I did against that enemy. In that mode, where there's all those abilities, you have everything from reducing the amount of stamina it takes off you to do attacks, increasing the amount of stamina it takes off enemies when you hit them, and increasing damage. You also have special abilities like doing special enders, doing kicks during combos, and some more interesting stuff involving the Jitsu stuff, which is your magic in this game. You'll notice I have a fully stocked special, but I'm not using it. I hate the specials in this game. Summoning Mozilla Firefox is just not fun for me. It does a weird AoE attack, and then it makes you completely invincible and gives you a fire sword. It's super gimmicky, and I'm not a fan at all. The cool thing is, when you die, you lose the spirit, and when you pick it up, you get it back, and you do get passive bonuses from them. Or that's what it seems to tell you, which is why I use the Kato one, because it gives you a benefit for combat. And I'm going to look on my inventory for some items to repair my weapon, and I don't have any. Which leads us to one of the things that I think that this demo does really poorly, and I'm hoping they'll adjust. So this game has weapon degradation, just like Souls. Only in this game, it's incredibly fast, and you're using whetstones all the time to keep the weapons that you like up to par. And at this moment in time, I don't have any whetstones, so I can't do that. So once my katana's broken, I'm now using a compromised weapon that does considerably less damage, which makes it a demo that's brutal even brutaler for not really the best reasons, as we fight this dude with a hammer, who's going to do massive damage to me. But the good news is, the AI on these is very, very predictable, and I lost my stamina, which completely freezes you in place, and I don't understand it, because did you see just then? I didn't even have an empty stamina bar, and that's one of the things that really confuses me about this game. There are times when you take massive stamina penalties when you still have stamina, and I don't get it. It happens during the bosses all the time, and I was just thinking, well, it's to do with those pools of dark energy that they leave, because you'll notice at times your stamina bar will be red around the outside of it, and it tells you that you're in some kind of stamina negation moment, but it's not the most, direct in explaining exactly what that means. And it tells you when you're in these negative pulse areas, if you use the Kai pulse, it'll get rid of it. But the Kai pulse is so slow, and it's so slow to recover afterwards, that you get killed doing that move. And you can press square and then triangle and do it, but you can get hit during it. And if you're up against a boss, the bosses in this game one-shot you really, really consistently. So it's kind of shitty. But it's... This entire alpha to me feels like it's balanced towards being difficult for the sake of being difficult. The mechanics don't help because they're not as precise or as intuitive as a Souls game. There's a lot of jank, there's a lot of goofiness to it, but it still manages to be unique and fun. And I think that's why I'm really, really liking this at the moment. Because in spite of the fact it's goofy as shit and weird, it still is fun and there's still something here that's worth playing. Now, this guy's using the low stance, by the way, the weak and super fast one, but when he dodged, he got his stamina back. You'll notice. You can always tell by how he stands. And I'm using the hammer because my weapon's broken. That's me getting a massive stamina penalty. That time makes sense because I was out of stamina. But look at him. He's going to outspeed me every time, which is a problem. Because frame advantage in this game is legit. So you need to be really careful. But there's a lot of aspects of this demo that I'm not really going to showcase too much, so I recommend that you try them yourself to see how you feel. Everything that I don't use is a personal thing more than anything. One of the best parts of this entire experience is the loot, I think. Everything seems to drop a shit ton of loot, which is great. I've seen a lot of people on GameFAQs complaining about that there's too much loot. I don't think that exists. I think those people are bitches and need to just, you know, appreciate that there is loot. You know, try farming Dark Souls 3 for something fucking rare. And I mean really rare. And you'll understand why everything dropping tons of loot is a good idea. You know. At least the fact when they drop something, it doesn't feel like a completely wasted venture. When they drop nothing and you just feel bad about yourself, there's nothing worse. That was a big stamina penalty. My fault though, I used the heavy attack in the high stance when I had very little. You see that just then? When my guy does that like weird stop? There is something wrong with the movement in this alpha where it doesn't calibrate the dead zone correctly on the controller and your character will stutter step because it will not know whether or not he's walking or running because it can't quite calibrate it, and it's weird. It happens very rarely. And you might be thinking, well, Chris, it might be your controller, because that's what I was thinking. But then I realised I've been playing Bloodborne, I've been playing Dark Souls 3 very recently, and I never walked weird on that game. So it's nothing to do with that. It's just this game needs some polish in a lot of ways. It needs a lot of balancing, a lot of polishing, and a lot of tweaking. My weapon's almost broken at this point. But you might be wondering, well, how do you heal in this game? And it's pretty simple. There are items called elixirs, which are mapped to up on the D-pad, and there are shrines. When you touch a shrine, it brings everybody back, just like Souls, and it also heals you. Every time you come back to this, you will have a set amount of elixirs, which increases for doing certain things. I'm not too sure what. You get elixirs for selling items, which is really goofy, but I kind of like it. Additionally, do not get attached to any of the loot. It's pretty much worthless. The great thing about the whole looting system is you can hold triangle and just hold down and it will highlight everything that you're not wearing and you can sell it for the... It's called like Amarita, which is a weird name, which is what you use to level up. It's essentially your souls. And I'm also going to be using items here to pop some consumables, which is going to let me then go ahead and level up a little bit more. So how high are we here? I am level 4, so I'm now level 7. And I was killing level 8 Revenants, so that just goes to show, guys, you don't have to be a super high level to be successful in this game, but it's going to help. A couple of things you need to know, though. I was level 40, consistently leveling up heart, which gave me HP, so I had like 1700 HP, and I was still getting 3 shot by enemies, and I was still getting 1 to 2 shot by bosses. And these are bosses that I'd killed 3 or 4 times before, so... That was wearing armor that had 99 values on it and having much higher life. It doesn't seem to make a difference. I don't think it'll work this way in the main game. I think they've made it this way so that they can do the whole ready to die bullshit that the description of this demo had. First thing the game says ready to die because it's trying to be this Dark Souls fucking difficult nonsense thing, even though Team Ninja created a much more difficult game before Dark Souls even existed. So I don't understand this notion of ready to die. There was no ready to fucking die and Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox. That game just shit on your chest and just ran away with it. Didn't care. Didn't gloat. It didn't advertise it like a selling point. It was a tough game for gamers who wanted a challenge, and that's exactly what they got. So to come to this game and be like ready to die, they're just trying to harp onto this bandwagon of Souls bullshit, which I've always thought has been a massive misnomer, because the The Souls games aren't hard, guys. They just don't hold your hand. They're not a fucking roller coaster with Michael Bay directing it, you know? They're a game that's not afraid to let you die a few times to learn. That's all it is. But we've got to the point where we're so fluffed and we're so entitled that we think by virtue of buying a game we should be able to beat it without playing it. And it's bullshit. So for Team Ninja to come and make this game and be like, get ready to die, this is like the Souls game in feudal Japan, and it seems really goofy to me, really weird. Because this is not as hard as Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden's a considerably harder game than this, you know. The only reason this game is difficult is because of the rules that it forces you to abide by. And I get the feeling when we play the main game and the full game released, the bosses aren't going to take 50 hits to kill. Because you're going to probably be able to get better weapons and they might be balanced a little bit better. The only reason a lot of stuff on this game is difficult is because you cannot do good damage to it, and it does massive damage to you, and that's the only challenge. It's kind of a bad challenge if you ask me. A lot of people might like it, but I've never liked that kind of difficulty, and that's why I've always respected Ninja Gaiden, which is why it's weird coming from Team Ninja. In Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, even in Ninja Gaiden 3, the bosses did good damage to you, but you did good damage to them. And that's why they always felt fair. Even when you were getting grabbed and instantly killed, and grabbed and grabbed and grabbed, and fucking Alexei grabbed, Volth grab, Zidonia's grab, Elizabeth grab, Genshin's grab, every grab under the fucking sun. The scenery grabs you in that game, like every grab you've ever faced, happening all the time. Iframes on a boss, iframes on a boss again, iframes on the boss again, no damage for you, no damage for you, wait for him to finish doing his stupid electricity move. Like all that bullshit. Even then, when you smacked them and you saw that massive chunk come off with the scythe or whatever you were using, it felt good. And that's why that game persists to be a fantastic game that people go back to. Because even at the worst moments where you're having an awful time against those bosses, when you do a 3-hit combo and it takes that massive chunk off, you feel like you're close to winning. And that's the secret. I'm getting owned. This guy has a high stance and I just couldn't parry it for the life of me. See what I mean? Parrying's very dangerous if you don't do it right. So there's me using an elixir, and we'll go back in and hopefully take him on. The bosses in this game are not that way at all. They're the complete opposite. Every boss does so much damage to you, it's just stupid, and it forces you to play very defensively, cowardly, and not take risks. And then when you hit the boss, you do so little damage, even with the best weapons in the game, that you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? And the only thing I can think of is maybe, you know, using a strength build and using a hammer that's got massive damage that does a big chunk. Because I was using a katana with electricity on it that had 445 attack, which is the highest I've seen anybody have in this game. I've not seen a weapon higher than that. On a level 40 build, and the first boss on this level you're watching right now still took just as long to kill, and killed me just as quickly as he did the first time I beat him. So it doesn't make any sense to me as a player. But we're coming up on the first shrine here, guys, outside of the starting shrine. There's me utilising the kick mid-combo, which is really good for doing stamina. It's good for trying to break guards and destroy people's ki. And all you have to do is navigate now past an archer and a dude who's sat down in this little shelter, and a guy to our left here who's going to ambush you with a spear. But you see how strong blocking is? Blocking is amazingly strong. The problem is, so is stamina management is so important in this game that you cannot attack more than a few times if you want to dodge, because you're just going to put yourself into negative equity and get bummed. And that's what this becomes. It becomes this ballet of controlling stamina. And if you're used to playing Dark Souls 3, a game where the stamina consumption is actually really generous, it's going to throw you off a lot. But here is a big axe guy. He will one-shot me if he touches me with anything, but the good news is we can both frame advantage him and just combo him, so that's not a problem. Just remember to block. Remember to always be putting on new armor that you acquire. Not only will you look like a better samurai with that traditional Japanese name of William, but that's the combo as well with the triangle in mid-combo. It's a really cool move. It does a lot of good damage too. But the shrine is just to my right, and you've done probably one of the trickier stretches of the demo, just because you don't know how to play and you don't have any good gear. And that's what you need to take away from this, folks. The better your gear, the better your weapons, the better the time you're going to have. And I'm not a big fan of games being like that, but I think it's just the demo. I think when we get the main game, it's probably not going to be 2 hits and then you're dead. every single time, regardless of life. I think they're probably going to tone that down, because they want people to come away from this experience feeling, wow, this game's harder than Dark Souls. And I think it's silly, personally, but I understand why they're doing it. So, I'm going to hit this shrine. I'm going to probably sell a bunch of stuff. I don't know why I'm doing this individually. You can just hold it. But I think I'm just taking my time for whatever reason. And yeah, welcome to my Niho walkthrough, and I will see you in part 2. You take care now.